Hey gang, it's Jeff from the Jamesfreddys channel. Okay, in this video of the 1969 Journey Camaro, we're going to go ahead and smooth out the factory firewall and then do a custom firewall overlay. So, some of the ideas we've been going through just by doing a quick Google search was, here's the one I really like. I like the way they just smoothed it all clean and kept it simple. Obviously, we're still going to keep the windshield washer motor. And then over here, we just kind of keep away and clean up the whole area for the brakes and steering to come through. And they went more evasive in here than I would care to do, but I do really like the looks of that. And there's some pretty cool things there. You can see like over the transmission tunnel where they set back so that you could have additional clearance for additional multiple options in motors, which we like. You know, if you wanted to run an HEI distributor, they still fit in a Camaro, but it would give you a little extra room. And then over here where the AC area is, there's kind of a cool little feature that we've thought about adding, and that's the idea of adding a little billet aluminum plate where you could run all your AC options, and then, you know, perhaps certain motors would get a fast, easy EFI, so you could do a little something with the custom plate in order to run some wiring through, or whatever options. I mean, obviously you're not going to do a ton over here on that side of the motor, but it would give you a little bit of an option to change. Now, the way I am approaching it is going to be to first shave and weld up all the holes that are on the factory firewall that we don't want anymore, and then overlay it with a custom steel firewall. And so we will begin shaving all our holes by cleaning up the metal on both sides and cutting patches for all the holes. This actually kind of sucks to do because it's one of the nicest trim tags I've ever come into contact with. And of course it's going to spin on it. Thank you very much for this. That one came out. At least I started. Yeah, no bent up corners, no nothing. We are out here in the garage. It's Friday night. It's pizza night. We're having a good time. Just kind of thinking about what tomorrow is going to be like working on the car. Good time. It just rained, so we're sweating like crazy because it's probably 100 and something.
Tucson, Arizona. You never know when it's going to happen. But I did not wash my truck this morning like I was planning on it, so I can't take credit.
It's cloud coverage. It's like 6 to 7, 8 weeks early. This is beginning of June in Tucson, and we've been getting some decent rain. Just so beautiful out. Now, with the camera off, I went ahead and removed the master cylinder and capped off the brake line so no contamination would get in them, although it's quite possible these will be replaced, but just in case. I went ahead and hammered and dollied and cleaned up around the insides of all the patches that we're going to do, and prefabricated a bunch of the patches so we'd be ready. Now, on both of these larger patches, these holes are flanged, so I went ahead and hammered and dollied them flat. So what we'll do is cut a patch to the size that we want, and then we'll be able to set it on here and scribe and cut away the additional metal that we won't need. Now over here on a piece of 18 gauge, I've got a 6 by 9 inch rectangular patch laid out, and we're going to go ahead and cut it out. And then over here we want a 5-inch hole. So we'll just mark off 2.5 inches. On the caliper, and just scribe for a 5-inch hole. And cut that out. We've got our two big patches kind of set in there and clamped down, and then we've got a bunch of little patches set in there and clamped down. And my idea is to work on all these small ones while doing a few short beads on these. But because I have everything kind of set with magnets, I'm going to go ahead and get all the little patches tacked, because much like on our floor rust patch repair, I'm going to go ahead and cut out this firewall to fit this patch as I start to weld it in. Same thing with over there. But like I said, if I start trying to work on that with all the vibration and stuff, these are all going to start falling and it'll be a pain. So to start with, we'll get all these things tacked in here. Okay, now 2 crowns. And that will just make the lovely weird thing for me. I'm not going to wait on it now. I can work on doing. I need to use tape. So here's one that I've been doing for a while. Sometimes a hole is just about that one little weird size that I don't necessarily just want to weld up, although it could easily be done. What I'll do is I'll take these little round punches that the pneumatic punch tool creates, and normally these would be weights, like if you punch in a quarter panel for plug weld, and I'll take my unibit and I'll step the hole size up to 3/8. And then I'm back on the tape because the magnet just sucks. So I'll tape about half of that little hole up, and then I'll just give it a tap with the welder. Tap with the welder, that is. And that'll be ready to plug up that hole. Leave a nice little perfect gap. So I stopped welding it about the halfway point, and then I got back to it, and then I was like, oh crap, I better shoot a little video. So here's kind of where we're at. And we're just going through and connecting all the welds. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier or not, but that yellow tape over there is where I'm not going to touch on the firewall, meaning when we put our new smooth overlay, it's going to go, you know, all the way around, but I'm going to leave all this vital driveline stuff, important stuff, just the way it is. Here we are welded for the most part, but I'm going to go ahead and suit up and grind on all these welds, get it down there pretty close, and then we'll shine a light from the inside of the car and weld up any pinholes that we might have missed. Here we are tonight. So all I had was black paper for this template, so I figured that'd be hard to see because everything's already painted black. And then I went ahead and took yellow masking tape and kind of outlined what we have. So we've left all the driveline. We've got the e-brake, we've got the electric, we've got the steering, we've got the brakes, we've got the clutch. All that stuff stayed over there. We've got the wiper motor still. And then over here we'll go our little 6x9 rectangular little bulkhead unit that'll go in the corner there. The main part of our template's done. So the last little piece, which will be a secondary part of the template, which will be this little symmetrical relief area that's going to go in here. That's going to be a pretty challenging piece for me to fabricate. So what's going on with the project now, Anna? Where are we at?
We went down to pick up some steel for aluminum.
Yeah, no.
Nope, steel? Okay.
Actually, we did get some aluminum, but the firewall is going to be made out of steel. Yes.
Okay. And then after that, which was an interesting experience as well, but we drove back and you broke out with your I'm not good at this.
Shear.
Your design or your pattern from the car.
Yep, the template.
And,
yep.
Yeah, the template.
Yep.
There we go. And then placed it on the steel and then used a Sharpie. I'm assuming you cleaned it first?
No, I left the oil on, actually.
Is that better for some reason?
I don't know. I was debating on that. I just went with that. The Sharpie still seemed to mark up the steel just fine, so I was okay with that.
Alright. And then Sharpied it, and I got the rough idea of what you're going to do. There's still some more details to iron out. And, oh yeah, I forgot, we also picked up tools so that you could cut out the design or the firewall
Yeah, I showed him that at Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
Where we ran into your friend Tony.
Yes, I worked with Sears for like 8 years or something like that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's managing the place, and he's a new dad.
Yep.
New dad, and he's a major
Just got a
barbecue,
smoker.
barbecue and
Really
smoking
excited
guy.
about that.
So here's the template. Down on the steel, we traced it out like Anna just said. So this is 20 gauge. I'm still unsure if I want to keep 20 gauge or go to 18. Just that little bit of thickness might give it a little rigidity. But what I'm thinking is, if I cut it all out to size right now where it gets really thin in these areas, the metal's going to be super thin and want to kink and buckle in those areas when we're running it through the bead roller. So I took a line and scribed out here to keep some of the bulk of the steel whenever we start to run it through the bead roller.
And should we add that we stopped by, or did you tell Mary we stopped by see Tyler and the Camaro, and that he did a video, and you will be seeing an update on that one.
Yeah,
soon.
And what else did we find? The thing that we thought we were being super cool and making clearance for?
Oh, yeah. Was not, yeah.
Not what we thought?
Not quite, yeah, high enough, the clearance. So
Yeah.
that's going to be another adjustment possibly, or hopefully it'll just kind of fit in.
We're going to go with it as a design feature.
Okay.
So what we're talking about is this area right here will get relieved, and it will go in about an inch and a half. And this is the transmission tunnel in the Firewall. And we thought we were being super slick by creating that extra little bit of depth away from the motor for the distributor. But it turns out the main bulk of the distributor sits up here, and to clearance that, you'd have to get into that whole cowl, and there's multiple sections of steel, and it would be a major ordeal. So I thought I was being all slick, and I had something that was not only going to be looking cool, but actually functioning and all that. But turns out we're just going to try and make something look a little cooler. A lot of extra work for a little extra reward, but hopefully it'll look good. Currently, I went ahead and cut out and drew some straighter lines on the piece, and we've got this aluminum bulkhead roughed out to size and located. We've got the location of our fender bolts of the Firewall and the bolts around the wiper. This area is now cleaned up with the right angles. I've drawn a center line, and I believe that this is where we'll start the fabrication in the Firewall. So I took a piece of 1.25 inches and I ran it through the spoiler die on the bead roller, and then I started shrinking it with the shrinker to get it to roughly match this area, just as a way to play around with it and see what we could do. So now the idea will be to take a little bit larger piece. So this is 1.5 inches, and I'm going to run that through. We got our piece here close, it sets on the firewall like this, and then I went ahead and traced that outline onto a piece of steel, ran it over to the bead roller, got a little sharp there, but and put that spoiler radius so that the two will fit something like that. This bottom line right here represents where the firewall will meet the floor in the car. And before we can weld these two together, we're going to go ahead and take this over to the roller and put a step flange in it. Is the Bighorn fire up to over 12,000 acres in the mountains north of Tucson, the Santa Catalina Mountains. Just a terrible fire going, and it's just raging on. That might be a backburn that they did there, because that just flared up pretty good over the last hour or two. Well, I got a little carried away welding last night, and I was charging the battery on the camera, so I couldn't do a lot of filming. But here we are. Here we are, kind of mocked up. I went ahead and made a second relief area there just because I thought I could make it a little better, and I figured I could have a test one, and then I also need two anyway. But yeah, I made a second relief area, which the second one did come out better, and now I'm just doing some kind of crude cuts to get this to set back a little bit closer so that I could refine my fitment along the edge. Perfect. Okay.
Are you going to look around? Just work behind you. Okay.
Okay. One, two, three, thumbs up. Ready, one down. One, two, three.
Okay, so I'll start from this and I'll transition to the center.
Okay. Yeah, or I got this. Yeah, that's perfect. Right there, and come back. And a little bit more, and we might have to turn it this way because we're just not running into the place. Nice. A little bit more. Catch up, and keep turning. Keep coming. And a lot more. Right in there. Alright, so now what we're seeing is we've been trimming away this area around the steering shaft and brakes as we're starting to get the firewall to set flush. Here we are, all fully welded in and ground down, and now I have to continue to strip some of the black, like around this drivetrain area where the brakes and the steering shaft come through. I want to strip that down so when I give it a coat of epoxy primer, we clean all that up at the same time. And then up here is a mechanism for opening and closing the cowl vent that comes on AC cars, if I'm not mistaken. And seems how we're going to go with a modern retrofit air conditioning system in this car. That will get welded up. And then I'm not going to turn into some stripping and restoration hero on this job, but I believe that I would like to strip it back into here down to the metal so that when the cowl panel and the fender sit on, it all has that perfectly good uniform gray epoxy primer to it. And then I'll let the painter or whoever wants to worry about like getting down into all the, you know, let someone else do all that work. I've been building these cars for so long, I've paid my dues on that stuff. I've stripped so many little areas like that. But yeah, there it is. Alright everybody, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. I've still got some body work to do on this before it gets ready for primer. Mostly some short strand fiberglass and or all metal over the welds to make them watertight, even though we epoxied the back side of the new firewall and the mating side of the old firewall, sandwich them with some epoxy. We still want to try and make everything as watertight as possible. But this is probably going on the longest video I've ever made, and it's just time to call it there. We've got it all installed, welded, designed. Yeah, I think it came out pretty good. Not quite as good as what I had in my head, but hey, that never really happens for me. But yeah, we'll get a little bit of body work going on in it. Our sound deadener worked really good, so there shouldn't be any issue with vibration. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. So the next time you see this, we'll be on one of the other projects.